Christopher John Björknes. It is April 17th, 2023. I am the author of a couple of books on the Armenian Genocide. Armenian Genocide Remembrance Day is fast approaching on April 24th. In 2006, I published my first book on the Armenian Genocide, and the Armenian community in Glendale, California, invited me out and hosted a conference for me. At that conference, I tried to warn the Armenian community that the Armenian Genocide was not a unique event in 1915. It was instead part of an ongoing process by Turks and Israelites who were bent upon exterminating the Armenian people from ancient times onwards. I tried to, as best I could, I tried to warn the Armenian community that there would soon be a resurgence of attacks against the Armenian people. And I expected that this would happen in fulfillment of the messianic prophecies of the Israelites and in fulfillment of the pan-Turkish ambitions of the Turks of Turkey proper and of Azerbaijan. My recommendations were that they try to improve relations with Turkic peoples and defend themselves from the Israelites who have a religious commandment, they believe, to exterminate the Armenian people. And my goal was to spread this information as far and wide as possible so that this campaign of extermination would be exposed and a spotlight would be shined on those who believe that the Armenian people are an evil people who must be completely exterminated before the Messiah will arrive. And it's such a fantastic story that it's difficult for people to comprehend and believe. But I have since published another book called The Forbidden History of the Armenian Holocaust. You can buy it on Amazon Books. And I am working on volumes 2 and 3. I'm going to expand it into a new series where I'm going to cover the ancient period up to the 1915 genocide, and then the period following the genocide to the present will be volume 3. If you'd like to help me in this effort, I have a contribution link in the description below to my PayPal donation page. A very generous friend has also encouraged me to set up to receive anonymous payments through cryptocurrencies, and I have a Bitcoin and Ethereum public keys in the description below. You can also find all of this on my website, CJB Books. You can find the first volume in this series, Forbidden History of the Armenian Holocaust, on my website, cjbbooks.com. Please be sure and check it out. So I again want to strongly emphasize the fact that the Armenian genocide was not something that occurred only in 1915, not only in the period from the Hamidian massacres of 1894 to 1896, all the way through to 1915. It didn't end when Mustafa Kemal Ataturk attacked the fledgling First Republic of Armenia and helped the Bolsheviks to overthrow the nation. And it's never going to end until those who designed it, those who implemented it, those who have been again and again ordering it are stopped. And I still believe that the best way to stop them is to shine a spotlight on them, to get their brethren to turn against them, to get the world to turn against them, and to end this process of destruction of the Armenian people. Armenia has a very long and colorful history. And as part of the ancient world and the trade routes that went from Egypt and Greece and Rome through to India and China and the tribes of the north and the Turkic tribes, Armenia got caught in the middle. And there were many, many wars and ethnic cleansings and massacres that were perpetrated against the Armenians and that Armenians perpetrated against others. It went both ways. It has been an ongoing fight back and forth. But what I'm going to focus on most today is the attacks from the Turks who migrated from Central Asia to attack not only the Armenians, but many European peoples and Middle Eastern peoples, and eventually conquered them and took over their lands. The Armenians had earlier struggles with Hittites and Assyrians, Macedonians and Romans, Persians, Arabs, etc. They have, the story is not only tragic, they have an amazing story of survival. They are still with us today. If we can win this fight, they will be with us forever. And that is why I am giving this presentation today to reveal what my research into the ancient past of the Armenians has revealed. It further validates and expands upon the research I had previously done and published in 2006 in very significant ways. I had always stated that this was the genocide is an ongoing process. It is an ancient hatred, and it has not ended. And we see today that Armenians are presently under attack. I anticipated these catastrophes. I anticipated the catastrophes of 2020. I did my best after the Velvet Revolution to try to inspire the Armenian community to defend themselves, because I anticipated that the catastrophes of 2020 would occur. I am again trying, and I published my book a few months, or even just a month, before this most recent Azeri aggression against the people of Nagorno-Karabakh, Artsakh, because I felt in my bones that this was about to heat up again. It's not that I'm a prophet, it's that I understand Jewish prophecy as their plans, and I knew that they felt an urgent need to once again perpetrate a genocidal attack on Armenians. And Israel is presently in a military alliance with the nation of Azerbaijan. They have supplied Azerbaijan with billions upon billions of dollars of weapons. They have encouraged the Azeri attacks on Armenians, given them political support, applauded their successes, and said that the attacks were justified. And I want to show some of my most recent research that ties this all back directly with proven evidence of this Judeo-Turkish alliance, going back at least as far as the Khazarians of the Khazar Khaganate. The Khazars began to attack the Armenian people in the year 198 AD. They later converted to Judaism. Some scholars believe in 620 AD. Others assert that it was in 740 AD. The Khazar Khaganate was a Turkish tribe that attacked across the Caucasus mountains from the north and made frequent raids against the Armenian people, committing slaughter after slaughter. The Khazar Cognate was part of this mass migration of Turks from the steppes of Central Asia. The Bulgars were another set of Turkish tribes that attacked. The Bulgars eventually took over this region, and the Khazars defeated the Bulgars and took over their lands. The Magyars of Hungary are another Turkish people. The Finns are related to the Turks. Turks have come in wave after wave, reaping destruction on European peoples and the peoples of the Middle East. They are presently operating under a mythology of pan-Turkism, which wants to unite all of the Turkish peoples and cleanse supposedly Turkish territory of all other non-Turkish peoples. The Argus produced the Seljuk Turks, who adopted Judaism from the Khazars and swept through Persia as well as through Armenia and into the Byzantine Empire, setting the stage for the Ottoman Turkish takeover of the Byzantine Empire. They eventually captured Constantinople and created a very vast empire of the Ottoman Empire. It was this Ottoman Empire in 1915 which conducted the infamous genocide of the Armenian people. They wiped out the Armenians of ancient Greater and Lesser Armenia, of Cilicia, Armenia, and of Syrian Aleppo, which had a large Armenian population. They attacked all of those groups of Armenians and perhaps killed off 1.5 million Armenians. They also attacked the Pontic Greeks and other Greeks and killed perhaps 900,000 Greeks. They destroyed 200,000 to 300,000 Assyrian Christians in that same period from, well, let's just say from 1894 to 1923. There were massacres that had occurred the other way. Greeks had massacred Muslims when they freed themselves from the Ottoman Empire. And there were Armenian massacres of Azeris and others that took place. There were some minor terrorist Armenian groups affiliated with the Tashnaks that committed some minor bombings that were used as a pretext for the 1915 genocide of Armenians. But this campaign to exterminate the Armenians completely is very unique, and it is based upon a religious mythology of the Israelites that the Armenians are the supposed Amalekites whom their God Yahweh has commanded them to completely exterminate and blot out. The Khazars converted to Judaism again either in 620 or 740 AD and seem to have adopted this desire to exterminate the Armenian people and passed it along to the Seljuk Turks, who eventually took over the beautiful, magnificent city of Ani, which had been the Armenian capital, and viciously slaughtered the Armenian people in the city of Ani. So my main point today is to expand upon research, which many of you are probably already familiar with, where I have proven that the 1915 Armenian portion of the Armenian genocide in this ancient, ongoing campaign to exterminate the Armenian people was conducted by the Dern-May crypto-Jewish Freemasons, who were followers of the false messiah Shabbatai Tzvi, in collusion with primarily Ashkenazi Zionist Jews, and with the Jewish financiers who wanted to destroy the Ottoman Empire and take over Palestine to create a Jewish homeland in Palestine, which was part of the Ottoman Empire. They first offered to buy it. Theodor Herzl gave an offer from the Rothschilds to buy Palestine from Sultan Abdul Hamid II. He declined that offer. And that was when the plans were firmed up to slaughter the Armenians. At first, they did it so that they could again offer to buy Palestine by offering to give the sick man of Europe, the Sultan of the Ottoman Empire, favorable press in Jewish-controlled press organs in the West. Alternatively, if he again refused their offers, he could turn the press against the Ottoman Empire, instigate World War I, and then pit the Christians against the Ottoman Empire for having committed massacres and genocide against the Armenian people. And that is how it eventually unfolded. Another aspect of this, again, is the belief that the Armenians are the Amalekites. The Babylonian Talmud in Tractate Sanhedrin, Folio 20b, said that when the Jewish people formed a homeland in Palestine, they were commanded to do three things. One of those three things was to exterminate the Amalekites, so it's not coincidental that they did it then. And that is also one of the reasons why the Israelis are working in collusion with the Azeris to again commit genocide against the Armenian people, so that they can do those other two things that they are commanded to do, which is to build a temple and to anoint their king. And they believe that this process has been hindered and delayed because they have not yet exterminated the Armenian Amalekites. I have many slides that I have been preparing in this ongoing research for volumes 2 and 3 of my series on the forbidden history of the Armenian genocide. In 1903, the Jewish Encyclopedia published the initial article of volume 4 on this theory, which was then prevalent, that the Khazars were this Turkish people who converted to Judaism, and it was then believed strongly that they might well have been the founders of the Ashkenazi branch of the Jewish people. There has been since genetic research which tends to indicate that the Ashkenazim instead derive from 4 European females who are certainly not Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, or Leah, and that through the male lineage they derive from Judeans, but they also have elements which correspond to Anatolian Turks, Armenians, Far Eastern Asians, and many other people. So they are very mixed race people. I personally think that the research has been very heavily politicized, and more research needs to be conducted to see whether or not they actually do descend to any appreciable extent from the Khazars. The Jewish Encyclopedia talked about these massacres that the Khazars, who eventually became Judaists, committed against the Armenians. The Armenian writers of the 5th and following centuries furnish ample information concerning this people being the Turkish Khazars. Moses of Corinne refers to the invasion by the Khazirs of Armenia and Iberia. That is not the Iberian Peninsula of Spanish Iberia. That's instead the Caucasus region of Iberia adjacent to Armenia and what was also Albania, not the later Albania near Yugoslavia, but the Caucasian Iberia. I'm sorry, Albania, yes, the Caucasian Albania and the Caucasian Iberia. At the beginning of the 3rd century, the Khagan was the king of the north, the ruler of the Khazirs, and the queen was the Shatun. History of Armenia, Book 2, page 357. We'll get to that. The Khazars first came to Armenia with the Basilkans in 198 AD. Though at first repulsed, they subsequently became more important factors in Armenian history for a period of 800 years. So this attack on the Armenians by these Turkish hordes, which came in floods all the way through, including the Mongols of the Golden Horde. Attila the Hun was also part of this Turkish horde migration, which wreaked havoc on all the peoples that they attacked for thousands of years. And it's an ongoing process. Driven onward by the nomadic tribes of the steppes and by their own desire for plunder and revenge, they made frequent invasions into Armenia. The latter country was made the battleground in the long struggle between the Romans and the Persians, this struggle, which finally resulted in the loss by Armenia of her independence, paved the way for the political importance of the Khazars. So this Turkish advance through Armenia into Anatolia and eventual conquest of Constantinople and the Byzantine Empire ultimately resulted in attacks leading all the way up to Vienna. Suleiman the Magnificent made footholds in Italy with the help of the French. So it wasn't only the Armenians who suffered from this, but the Armenians were targeted for extermination. That 5th century historian he referred to, Moses Koronatsi, wrote in the 2nd book of the history of Armenia. Varlash died after reigning for 20 years, while some kings only lived till death. I can say that he lives after death, thanks to his good name, longer than weaker kings. For in his days the hordes of the United Highlanders, namely the Khazars and Basils, led by their king, a certain Vanasep Surkap, emerging from the gate of the Khor, splashed across the Kur River to this side, and Varlash met them with a large army, and warlike men covered the field with the corpses of the scattered by him hordes, and in a long pursuit made his way through the Khor passage. Here the armies gathered again and lined up for battle, and although the brave Armenian men overthrew them and put them to flight, Valarsh died at the hands of the skilled archers. So this was a process going back more than 1,800 years of this Turkish attack on the Armenian people. Arthur Koestler wrote a book called The 13th Tribe. He argued that the Khazars were did in fact produce the Ashkenazim. But more significantly for what we're discussing, he also discussed the fact that the Khazars converted to Judaism, which is a proven fact, and that they waged relentless attacks against the Armenian people. So this was a Judeo-Turkic onslaught on the Armenian people, which began as a Turkish onslaught in 198. Beyond these extended dominions, Khazar armies also raided Georgia and Armenia and penetrated into the Arab Caliphate as far as Mosul. In the words, the Khazars during most of this period seem to be happily occupied with raiding the rich Transcaucasian regions of Georgia and Armenia and collecting precious plunder. At one stage during these 15 years of fighting, the Khazars overran Georgia and Armenia, inflicted a total defeat on the Arab army in the Battle of Ardabil, AD 730, and advanced as far as Mosul and Diyarbakir, more than halfway to Damascus, capital of the Caliphate. Joseph's letter, he was a Jewish Khazar who corresponded with a Jewish gentleman in Spain who represented the government and was writing to the Khazars about what he had heard of their Jewish kingdom. Joseph's letter continues by relating how the angel appeared once more to the dreaming king and bade him to build a place of worship in which the Lord may dwell. For the sky and the skies above the sky are not large enough to hold me. King Bulan replies bashfully that he does not possess the gold and silver required for such an enterprise, although it is my duty and desire to carry it out. The angel reassures him. All Bulan has to do is to lead his armies into Dariela and Ardabil in Armenia, where a treasure of silver and a treasure of gold are awaiting him. So these Turkish Jews wanted to take over Armenia, steal the wealth of Armenia, and they were inspired by religious motivations. After these feats of arms, the invasion of Armenia, King Bulan's fame spread to all countries. The king of Edom, Edom is the country that has to be destroyed and is the country of Christendom. The king of Edom, Byzantium, and the king of Ishmaelim, the Muslims are named after Ishmael, heard the news and sent to him envoys with precious gifts and money and learned men to convert him to their beliefs. But the king was wise and sent for a Jew with much knowledge and acumen and put all three together to discuss their doctrines. And the king converted to Judaism. Nor had the Georgian or Armenian scribes, whose countries of a much older culture had been repeatedly devastated by Khazar horsemen. These Turks have been slaughtering Armenians for thousands of years. A Georgian chronicle echoing an ancient tradition identifies them with the hosts of Gog and Magog, wild men with hideous faces, and the manners of wild beasts, eaters of blood. An Armenian writer refers to the horrible multitude of Khazars with insolent, broad, lashless faces and long falling hair like women. Again, the point I'm getting at, this genocide has been going on for thousands of years. It's going on today. It has to stop. One of the ways I hope I can help to contribute to that process is to inform you of these facts. The fact that this is a Judeo-Turkish alliance, which for thousands of years has been setting about to exterminate the Armenian people. Yes, the Armenian people have also committed massacres and ethnic cleansing of Azeris on lands in which the Armenians had been living previous to these Turkish invasions. I don't excuse that. That is a part of the history. And that is also has to stop. This bloodshed, this violence must end. The History of the Caucasian Albanians by Moses Dashgiranshi. This is another very famous Armenian historian. The Armenians are a very intellectual people, and they have produced wonderful historians who have recorded events that other historians have missed. And the Armenian historians captured this history of the Khazar attacks on their people and upon other peoples of the Caucasus and other regions. Then the news reached the court that the Khazars had emerged in large numbers through the gates of Chole into our country, and Shapur assembled a numberless army of men from Asarestan, Zorazm, and many other brave Persians from the province of Aderpatakan, and Armenians, Georgians, Albanians, and the 12 tribes of the wild peoples of Mount Caucasus. And with these countless forces, he rose and marched against them. I won't read all of this. You can pause the video and read it if you'd like. It is again talking about how after these events, the land of Albania was captured by the Khazars, and churches and gospels were destroyed by fire. Christians were attacked. In great hordes, the Khazars emerged and fell upon our country, that country being the country of the Armenians. The savage, putrid beast came down with its bloodthirsty whelp, shot and fixed its eyes upon the kingdom of Georgia and the city of Tiflis, and there were none of the courageous men previously to be found among them, and the Khazars had the occasion to vent the spite that had rankled within them since the recent insult. And after them came the merciless reapers, their hands shedding torrents of blood, their feet trampling upon corpses, their eyes beholding the dead like a shower of hail. When the wailing and groaning subsided and not a single person was left alive, the Khazars knew that their swords had drunk their fill. They have fallen, vanquished by a few. Knowing you to be depopulated, the Khazars have set their hearts upon inheriting the glories of the land of the Aryans. I'm reading this to emphasize how brutal these attacks were, how they were invasions, how they were conquests, and conquests by genocide. And this is part of an ongoing tradition. There are today Pan-Turks who call themselves gray wolves. They teach their children to utilize this ancient gesture that was utilized by the Huns and the Bulgars and the Khazars of a wolf howling, and they fill these kids' heads with hatred, genocidal hatred of the Armenian people. This is ancient, and it is taking place today. Please help me to stop it. When the Khazars had plundered the corpses and collected the ornaments of their horses, their lances and gold-plated swords and precious robes skillfully dyed and fashioned by the Greeks, they shared the whole pile among themselves. This type of slaughter is part of this 2,000-year pattern. In the 1915 genocide, the Ottoman Turks let prisoners out of prison and allowed them to slaughter Armenians and keep all the wealth that they stole. They also enticed the Kurdish people of eastern Anatolia to commit genocide against the Armenians. And once again, they offered them the plunder of the slaughtered Armenians. The Armenians were very successful businessmen. They were involved in banking. They were professors. They were involved in the government. And they were wealthy people, and they were resented for that wealth. And their wealth was offered up as plunder, as an incentive to the lowest classes of the Turks and to the Kurdish people, who who were struggling and poor people, which encouraged them to continue this ongoing Turkish process of extermination. And they were ordered to do so by crypto-Jewish Freemasons calling themselves Young Turks, who issued orders in biblical terms to exterminate them. The Khazar Judaism and bloodlust for the Armenians passed along to the Seljuk Turks. Tamara Talbot Rice writes in the Seljuks in Asia Minor. The Seljuks claim to be of royal descent, tracing their ancestry back to Seljuk, who, according to the Tanat Guzaidi, or History of Mustafi, belong to the Kabak tribe of the princely house of Afarsiya. Many legends are associated with Seljuk's name. One of these tells of his encounters in single combat with the Khan of the powerful Jewish Khazars. The point of this is that Seljuk, the founder of the Seljuk Turks, and or his father were converted to Judaism by the Jewish Khazars, and they then attacked the Armenian people in the city of Ani. The great-grandson of Seljuk attacked Ani and slaughtered, viciously wiped out the Armenians in their capital city, what had been their capital city. Tukuk, who was the father of Seljuk, began his career in the army of the Khan of the Jewish Khazars. Seljuk's 4 sons and successors, Mikhail, Yunus, Musa, and Israel, strengthened their hold on Bukhara and Samarkand. The choice of Jewish names for 2 of these princes seems to confirm Dunlop's suggestion that Seljuk, together with some of his courtiers, may well have followed the Khazars who had befriended his father in becoming converts to Judaism. This is another instance of the Judeo-Turkish alliance, which became strongest when the Young Turks overthrew the Ottoman Empire and put Talat Pasha, who was Jewish, and Javid Bey, who was Jewish, Enver Pasha, Cemal Pasha, Dr. Nazim, Emmanuel Carasso, put all of these Jews into power, who then ordered the extermination of the Armenian people. This is Dunlop's book, which was just referred to. He again talks about the fact that Tukak was one of the commanders of the Khazar Khagan. He became one of the chiefs of the Khazar Turks. The sons of Seljuk were named Mikhail, Yunus, Musa, and Israel. Mikhail and Israel, or their equivalents, are attested Jewish names in the Middle Ages. The house of worship among the Gus mentioned by Qazwini might well have been a synagogue. So it is likely that the Seljuk Turks inherited from the Jewish Khazar Turks both Judaism and the quest to destroy the Armenian people. They then passed it along to the Ottoman Turks. At the same time, the Jews of the Byzantine Empire were referring to the Armenians as the Amalekites, a people who must be completely exterminated. These Jews obviously had tremendous influence with the Turks, most especially when they overthrew the Ottoman Turkish Empire. Armenia is also sometimes called Amalek in some sources, and Jews often referred to Armenians as Amalekites. This is the Byzantine term for the Armenians. It was adopted by the Jews from the Josephine Chronicle, 10th century, chapter 64. So this was a very old medieval belief among the Jews that the Armenians are the Amalekites who must be exterminated. The Jews utilized their power together with the Turks to implement this plan to exterminate the Armenians repeatedly, and for at least since their involvement with the Khazars. When they eventually overthrew the Ottoman Empire, they issued orders in biblical terms. The commandment to exterminate the Amalekites is iterated in, among other places, Deuteronomy chapter 25, verse 19. When the Lord your God gives you rest from all the enemies around you in the land he is giving you to possess as an inheritance, you shall blot out the name of Amalek from under heaven. Do not forget it. The 7 nations of Canaan were also commanded to be destroyed. Deuteronomy chapter 7, verse 2 states, And when the Lord your God has delivered them over to you, and you have defeated them, then you must destroy them totally. Make no treaty with them, and show them no mercy. The orders that the Jewish Young Turks gave have been preserved, and Taner Akçam published them in his book, Killing Orders, and they are expressed in these exact biblical terms, in Hebraic terms. It had previously been communicated that the government, by order of the Chimayet, the Committee of the Ittihad, Committee of Union and Progress, had decided to completely annihilate all Armenians living in Turkey. Those who oppose this command and decision cannot remain part of the official structure of the state. Without paying attention to women, child, and incompetent, no matter how tragic the methods of annihilation might be, without listening to feelings of conscience, their existence must be ended. In other words, make no treaty with them and show them no mercy. You must destroy them totally. That was again reiterated in this order. Although the intent has long existed to eliminate the empire's Armenian subjects, who have for centuries longed to undermine the sound foundations of the state and posed a serious threat for the government, the suitable conditions to do so did not exist. Again, this was a campaign for thousands of years, not merely centuries, a Judeo-Turkish campaign to exterminate the Armenians in their homelands. Conditions to do so did not exist, and it was therefore not possible to realize this sacred aim being to exterminate the Amalekites so that the God Yahweh would allow the Jewish people to form a homeland in Palestine, to rebuild their temple, and to anoint their king. Since all obstacles to this course of action have now been removed, in other words, the crypto-Jewish Freemasonic Young Turks have taken power, and the time has come to rescue the homeland from this dangerous element, in other words, to redeem Palestine from the Amalekites. It is necessary to work both consciously and with full commitment, and without giving in to feelings of mercy, show them no mercy, and compassion, to blot out the name Armenian in Turkey by putting a complete end to their existence. When the Lord your God gives you rest from all the enemies around you, in other words, when the time arrives, in the land he is giving you to possess as an inheritance in Palestine. You shall blot out the name of Amalek, meaning the Armenians to these people, from under heaven. Do not forget. This is another acknowledgement of the fact that the Byzantine Jews, not just the Byzantine Jews, Jews in general viewed the Armenians as if the Amalekites. Since 1921, the greatest part of Armenia, together with the bordering, formerly Turkish provinces, has formed a Soviet republic within Transcaucasia, which in 1920 numbered a Jewish population of about 2,000. Since the Armenians are considered descendants of the Amalekites, they are called, among the Jews of the Orient, also Timhe. Thou shalt blot out. Deuteronomy chapter 25:19, which I just read to you, referring to the Amalekites. It is no coincidence that as soon as the Young Turks came to power, they started issuing orders to massacre and exterminate the Armenian Amalekites. This was recognized by many governments around the world. It was reported upon in the London Times. It was reported upon in the New York Times. There were open allegations that the supposed Young Turks were Dernme crypto-Jews from Salonika, that they were Freemasons, and that they were specifically targeting Christians for extermination. And you can go through and read this article. Declares that Jews incite massacres. It was published in the New York Times. There were many more articles of correspondence which are reproduced in my books that took place in the Times of London in the same period. So these are well-known facts. T.E. Lawrence of Arabia, despised Armenians and called for the extermination of the Armenian people. So he is a historical witness who was antagonistic to the Armenians, but was very favorable to Jewry and to Freemasonry. And he said that the Young Turk movement was 50% crypto-Jew and 95% Freemason. All the top leaders were either crypto-Jews or open Jews like Emmanuel Carasso. The British ambassador to the Ottoman Empire, Sir Gerard Lothar, wrote several letters to the British Foreign Office in which he explained the fact that the Young Turks were Jewish Freemasons, primarily from Salonika. Some of them were regular Jews. Some of them were these Dernme crypto Jews who followed Shabbatai Tzevi. And they established a Freemasonic lodge called the Macedonia Resorta. Again, you can go through and read some of this history. It was known to the British government. It was known to all the governments around the world that this is what was taking place. It was crypto-Jewish and Freemasonic. Javid Bey, the Minister of Finance, was one of these prominent crypto-Jewish Freemasons who called themselves Young Turks and who issued those orders to completely exterminate the Armenian people as part of this 2,000-year campaign by Turks and Jews to exterminate the Armenian people, which is heating up at this present moment, and which I have for almost 20 years been trying to warn people that we need to stop this. This again relates to Gerard Lothar's letters to the British Foreign Office, in which he described what was taking place. In its internal form, the committee appears to be a Judeo-Turkish dual alliance. the Turks supplying a splendid military material, and the Jews the brain, enterprise, money, ergo Javid Bey's recent loan in Paris. He was the finance minister, crypto-Jewish Dernmay, and a Freemason. And he was also descended from, I think, Baruch Yah Russo, who was one of the supposed inheritors of Shabbatai Tzevi's soul. And a strong press influence in Europe, well, as shown by Zionist literature, since the revolution, the Jewish world seems to have now turned its eyes toward Mesopotamia as the land best suited to Jewish colonization and the ultimate formation of a Jewish autonomous state. In order to form that state, according to Sanhedrin Folio 20b, they had to first exterminate the Amalekites, which was one of the reasons why they set about to exterminate the Armenians in 1915. The Times History of the War wrote about the fact the Dernmay were represented by Javid Bey, the financier on the Committee of Union and Progress, and through Oriental Freemasonry, which they controlled, the Salonika Sephardim were associated from the beginning with the young Turkish movement. If the Khazar hypothesis that they were the founders of the Ashkenazim, which may or may not be true, you have both these Sephardim from Salonika and the Ashkenazim attacking the Armenian people, whether or not they were descended from the Khazar Turks, who were Judaists and who also, starting in the year 198, began to exterminate the Armenian people. Joachim Prinz, in his book The Secret Jews, wrote, "The revolt of the Young Turks in 1908 against the authoritarian regime of Sultan Abdul Hamid began among the intellectuals of Salonika." Those intellectuals were crypto-Jewish Freemasons and regular Jewish Freemasons. It was from there that the demand for a constitutional regime originated among the leaders of the revolution, which resulted in a more modern government in Turkey, where Javid Bey and Mustafa Kemal both were ardent Dernmays. Mustafa Kemal descended from Shabbatai Tzevi. Javid Bey became Minister of Finance. Mustafa Kemal became the leader of the new regime, and he adopted the name of Ataturk, which means father of the Turks, despite the fact that he was Jewish. His opponents tried to use his Dernmay background to unseat him, but without success. Too many of the Young Turks in the newly formed revolutionary cabinet prayed to Allah, but had as their real prophet Shabtai Tzevi, the Messiah of Smyrna. After World War I, Mustafa Kemal, who had been a military figure among the Young Turks, had this Turkish nationalist movement, eliminated the Muslim caliph, started to make the Turkish people nationalistic and secular, and promoted this pan-Turkic agenda, which is being utilized today to promote the extermination of the Armenians so that Turkey and Azerbaijan can swallow up Armenia and make it part of pan-Turkey, so that this ancient conquest of the Turkish people from the steppes of Central Asia all the way through to Hungary and Finland will progress to conquer and kill off all of the indigenous peoples, but most especially to exterminate the Armenians, who are in imminent danger as I speak. This was an article in the Literary Digest of October 14th, 1922, which says that Mustafa Kemal Ataturk was a Spanish Jew by ancestry, For Kemal, like Enver Pasha, was an Orthodox Muslim, is descended from those Spanish Jewish families. It later came out that there was someone who had spoken to Mustafa Kemal Ataturk. He said that he recited the Shema prayer and that he was descended from Shabbatai Tzvi. Emmanuel Carasso was another Jew. He was open Jew. He was not crypto-Jewish. He was one of the founders of the Committee of Union and Progress. He organized a lot of the funding for it. He helped organize the Freemasonic lodges that were involved. The Oxford and Cambridge Review wrote, "Since that time, the proportion of non-Mohammedans has still further increased. In 1911, according to General Sharif Pasha, who is now in a position to know, having served on the committee, the directorate of the Union and Progress Committee was composed of 3 Jews, Messrs. Carasso, Cohen, and Faraji, 9 Maimins, those are the crypto-Jewish Dern May, Javid Bai, Dr. Nazim, who was another very anti-Christian founder of the Committee of Union and Progress, Osman Talib Bai, who issued the orders to exterminate the Armenians, Balji, Kiani Ipek, Karakash, Kiazim, and Osman Adil. The Turkish members were only 3, scarcely 1/5 of the committee, but all the top ones were Jewish. And there were many other than appear in this list. The Turkish lodges have, moreover, now abandoned the policy of affiliating themselves abroad, and since 1909 have federated themselves together, forming a Turkish Grand Orient, at the head of which there is a Meymin. That's what the Dern May called themselves, Talat Bey, I'm sorry. And the Grand Council of which is exclusively compounded of Jews and Maimins such as Messrs. Carasso, Cohen, Faraji, Javid Bai, Solomon Kibar, etc. That is to say, the old Salonika Committee has less the few genuine Turks who served on that body and have been eliminated. Became president of the chamber, 2 of the members of the occult directory of Salonika, 2 Maimins, Talat, the postman, and Javid, an elementary schoolmaster, became ministers. There was rich booty to be plundered, but it all went to the people who had been directly connected with the Jews of the Salonika Committee. The book Fendi, which appeared in Turkey in 2004, pointed out that Javid Bai of Salonika was known, but it was the first time that it was written so openly that Talat Pasha was a Shabbatayan. Those are those Dern May. Mehmet Talat was also a Bektashi. Those are the Sufi Muslims. And he was a Mason. He was Grand Master of the Oriental Lodge of Constantinople. And he spoke about this Judeo-Turkish alliance. Hans Lucas Kieser wrote, Talat was seduced by the idea of an Islamic-Jewish alliance of sorts opposite Europe, or at least found that it opened up an additional range of operation for him. Islam is decaying, it is going, and must inevitably disappear if there is no support coming from the outside. We do not possess the intelligence, nor the know-how, nor the money. The Jews have got all this, but they lack the field of action. The Jews shall come to us to direct our affairs, forming an intimate alliance with us. Talat was very helpful to the Zionist cause. They recognized that he spoke Ladino, Judeo-Spanish idiom. They referred to him as the Jewish minister. He was the minister of the interior, and he was Jewish. And this wasn't the only instance where he referred to the Judeo-Turkish alliance. The Ottoman Empire was supplied by arms, propaganda, and funds by the Freemason, who called himself Parvis, but his real name was Israel Lazarovich Gelfand. This wasn't the only time that Jews supplied funds and armaments to this Turkish quest to exterminate the Armenians. Israeli involvement in Nagorno-Karabakh can be assessed in two discrete dimensions. Firstly, Israel was the only state to conduct arms trading with Azerbaijan. From 2012 to 2015, an estimated $4 billion in arms were sold to the Azeris. The Israelis received 40% or more of their oil from Baku in Azerbaijan. They have since sent billions more in arms to Azerbaijan to be used against the Armenians and Iranians. They have set up an airbase in Azerbaijan to refuel their jets should they bomb Iran. They could also launch attacks from Azerbaijan. They are stirring up a war not only against the Armenians but between the Azerbaijanis and the Iranians. Netanyahu has been spouting off internationally for decades that he wants there to be a war against Iran to obliterate Iran. Many Jews have spoken of dropping a nuclear bomb on Tehran. Haaretz reported 92 flights from Israeli base reveal arms exports to Azerbaijan. Haaretz investigation reveals dozens of cargo flights from Baku to Israeli airstrip used for export of explosives. Israel sells Azerbaijan weaponry worth billions, and per sources receives oil and access to Iran. They spy on Iran from Azerbaijan. Tensions between Azerbaijan and both Iran and Armenia have ratcheted up recently. So I hope I have made it very clear that the Armenian genocide was not a moment in history that happened a long time ago, but instead has been a 2,000-year campaign which is the product of a Judeo-Turkish alliance to wipe out the Armenian people and to create a pan-Turkish empire to replace them. The Armenians are in immediate danger. They need your help and support. Please spread this information. Please also visit my website, cjbbooks.com. You can find my book, Forbidden History of the Armenian Genocide. If you would like to help support my continuing research to produce volumes 2 and 3, as well as several other books I'm currently working on. I'm also producing these videos and mouthing off on Twitter. And I very much need your financial support to keep going. Please visit my website. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next time.